Once we can define our world, it is often easier to go through and pinpoint all of the things that tend to make your world unique. Some people will then start to exploit this kind of individuality in the hopes of trying to connect with you on a more personal level. For example, you may meet someone new, and they might be able to notice that you like henna tattoos, and in an attempt to get a bit closer to you, they go out and get one. But then you find out that they are doing this to get something from you. This is an example of a manipulator. The manipulator has found a way to break into your world by disguising themselves as someone they can relate to, when in reality, when they are just trying to distract them from getting closer. There are times when people are going to come into your life to make you rethink your choices based upon your world. They might make you question whether this idea or this new person or the new situation to fit in with your own beliefs. Are you sure that you are not going against anything you believe in? If you encounter an excellent manipulator, someone more of a master at it will make you question your morals. And then when your beliefs become vulnerable, they're going to swoop in and see whether or not they can take advantage of that. Let's take a look at an example of this. If you know someone and they know that you are a somewhat religious person, it is possible that they may try to manipulate you by using religion against you. They may be able to use that to their advantage and play on your weaknesses. They may know that as a religious person, breaking your moral code can end up causing a lot of pain. They can even use guilt and some of the other tactics of manipulation about the things that matter to you to make sure that they get what they want. Mimicking your body language. So the first thing that we are going to take a look at here is the idea of the manipulator and of those using NLP tactics, using mimicking body language to help them. Those who are good at handling these kinds of tactics will start to mimic the body language of the victim they are working on. This helps the victim feel like there is a closer connection with the manipulator, and they often don't even realize that it is happening. So if the victim is standing with their hand on their hip, then the NLP user is going to do the same thing. If the victim is overly confident, with their chest puffed out and their arms crossed a bit, then the NLP user is going to do the same thing. The point here is that the manipulator is going to pay close attention to their victim and the body language that the victim is using, and then they will copy that. This helps to form a connection between the victim and the manipulator, letting the victim know that the manipulator is someone they can trust and depend on. In some cases, a masterful NLP manipulator is going to be able to start similarly talking to the victim. So if someone is overly enthusiastic, the NLP user might feed on that enthusiasm, exerting a good mood and overall happiness as well. This can also go the opposite way in terms of personality. If the manipulator comes across someone who seems more pessimistic or someone who complains often and likes to share negative views, then the user of NLP is going to work on matching this and will send out the same kind of attitude in the process. The manipulator may even use the sense of touch to their advantage, touching the other person a bit to form a stronger connection. This can be a bit violating, but some people are so thrown off by this kind of touch that they aren't able to notice that the manipulation is going on. This can often happen in the workplace and even in a school setting. A teacher or a boss may come up behind the student or the worker and then places a hand on their shoulder. This can seem friendly in some cases, but it is often one of the ways that are used to exert power over the other person or the victim. To make sure that the situation doesn't become uncomfortable, most people and most victims will allow the other person to touch them. While the victim was trying to avoid a scene, the manipulator was able to gain more power only by using the touch. If you want to make sure that someone isn't mimicking your movements or trying to use NLP on you, try to do some strange things that you wouldn't usually do, and then check to see whether the other person is working on the same thing. Maybe you can find a funny trick that you can do with your hand, like tapping the top of your head lightly as you talk. You can move your eyes around rapidly or tilt the head to the side back and forth. If you do some things that are out of your norm and you notice that the other person is doing them as well, then there is a high probability that they are trying to use some of the NLP tactics on you. This is the same idea that you can do for anyone who tries to touch you during a conversation or at work. If you don't feel like being touched by this person, don't stand by being quiet. Take some time right then and there to call that person out. You don't have to make a big scene, but politely asking them to stop will usually get them to let up and not do it again. Now, it is important to realize that some people will adopt the mannerisms and behaviors of those around them because that is how their personality is. This is more of codependency rather than a tactic of manipulation. To figure out the true intentions of the other person, you may need to look at that person and figure out what they are likely to gain from the situation. If they don't seem to be taking anything from you as they do it, then this is a sign that it is behavior that is harmless. Cold reading. Another thing that can happen with NLP tactics is a process that is known as cold reading. This is when the manipulator is going to try and convince you that they already know more than they do. Some people who do this already include psychics, fortune tellers, mediums, and mentalists. They will use it to make the victim feel like the manipulator is more aware of specific facts. Those that know how to read cold can pick up on your verbal cues and your body language very quickly and can soon understand how you work and who you are. From there, they can use a series of guesses to figure out information, to analyze what they see in your body language and other responses that the victim gives to learn whether they are right or not. For example, a psychic could start with a group and tell these people that they are speaking with someone, and that person has a name that begins with J. Now, most people in the audience likely know someone in their life who died and had a J name. So these people might assume the psychic is talking about someone they knew. The audience member may even speak up and say something like, "My Uncle Jason just died." The supernatural will then go with that audience member, playing off their body language and making some small and very general guesses that the member of the audience can relate to their own life. Confusing phrasing. Those who like to use the tactics of NLP are going to love gibberish. They will say some quick phrases, or they may hide certain words in bulky sentences so they can sneak in the real meaning of what they would like to say to the victim. This is something that we can regularly see in advertisements. Maybe there will be an overload of information. Listen to a commercial that has some medication or another being advertised. In this one, the whole commercial is going to talk about the medication and how great it is, and then in the last little bit, usually just a few seconds, there will be a very quick reading that contains all the cautions and the warnings that a patient should know about taking that pill. This kind of thing can also be seen in the different types of interactions that we have with people. You will find that younger kids and even teens can be good for this. They may ask for permission to get or do something, and then they will start with all of the reasons why someone would say yes to the request. Then, in the end, they will rush through any of the reasons that the parent or another person would say no to the request. Someone who is using NLP is going to make sure that they stay pretty vague on what they say. They could go with jargon that is quick so that you can be distracted, or they will be so general that you become confused about the actual intentions because you can't stick with any of the words or thoughts. A good example of this is some of the political phrases that have become popular over the years. Obama simply used change in his campaign, which is something that could appeal to anyone. This is something that many manipulators can use too. They will stick with sayings that are vague so that they can appease the most significant number of those around them. These manipulators may say things like, "I'll take care of it," and then they won't offer up any ideas or explanation of how they are going to fix that problem. Then other manipulators might include those that leave out any information that might alter the perspective of the victim, and they will choose to stick with general information. Using your wants against you. The last thing that we are going to take a look at is the idea that manipulators and NLP experts are going to learn how to use your wants, or the wants of their chosen victim, against them. Those who are skilled in using NLP are easily able to tell and know what they want. This is because they have wants that are serious as well. While everyone has their individual and unique experiences, ones that can keep them apart from others. It isn't uncommon for many of us to share the goals. Achieving fame or fortune, or reaching true happiness can be big ones. You will find that those manipulators who are good at using NLP are practiced at knowing what people want. They can then use these desires against the victim to get what they want. Remember that the manipulator can feed off the emotions of their victim, and the manipulator isn't going to care how your emotions affect you, but how they can use these emotions against you. For example, they may be good at finding those who want more attention or seek the approval of others, and then prey on them to get what they, the manipulator, wants. Those who can use the tactics of NLP are going to be more dangerous than the manipulators who we talked about before. These individuals can take it a bit further, and they can take the time to study how the brain works, and then can use this to their advantage. If you feel that someone is using these tactics of NLP against you, then you may find that it is harder to deal with and avoid compared to regular manipulation, and often it is harder even to recognize. But the good news is that you can continue to use the same techniques that we talked about before, earlier in this guidebook, to deal with these kinds of manipulators as well. NLP is a wonderful technique that individuals can use on themselves if they are interested in learning more about themselves and making changes to the way that they think and view the world. But if these techniques are used in the hands of the manipulator, it can be a dangerous tool, one that is hard for the victim even to recognize, much less fight against.